Many people feel strange or even embarrassed about talking to themselves. Maybe you've caught yourself rehearsing a conversation you're going to have, as if you were mentally training what to say. Or perhaps even answering questions out loud, as if you were debating with yourself. At first glance it might look odd, but for Carl Jung this has nothing to do with madness. In fact, he would call this habit active imagination. It was a technique Jung himself used, dialoguing with inner images, voices, and characters as if they were real. For him, this was one of the most powerful ways to establish contact between the conscious and the unconscious. And this is precisely where intelligence comes in. When you talk to yourself, you are exercising the autonomy of thought. Your mind doesn't depend solely on external stimuli to function. It creates, questions itself, and feeds on its own creative flow. So the next time you catch yourself talking alone, remember, this is not a sign of imbalance. It may actually be an indication that your psyche is active, creative, and deeply connected to dimensions that most people ignore. Another behavior that many people consider strange is an interest in topics that society usually avoids. Maybe you felt curious about subjects like death, spirituality, the occult, alchemy, or even depth psychology. While most people prefer to talk about entertainment or light subjects, you may find yourself searching for answers in books, films, or conversations about what is hidden, about what seems forbidden. This often causes discomfort. Some people even judge those who are drawn to these subjects, calling it morbid, dark, or even dangerous. But Jung saw exactly the opposite. For him, this kind of interest is a sign of courage. It is the natural movement of the psyche toward what he called the shadow, the unknown, repressed, or denied side of our mind. Only those with a differentiated intelligence allow themselves to look at what most people prefer to ignore. And more than that, Jung also understood this fascination as a manifestation of the universal archetypes. In other words, it's as if your mind intuitively grasps that within these mysteries lie fundamental truths about human life. Therefore, if you are interested in taboo subjects, don't blame yourself or hide it. According to Jung, this may be one of the clearest signs of symbolic intelligence, the capacity to seek meaning precisely where others see only fear or prohibition. One of the clearest signs of a deeper intelligence is when someone starts questioning the meaning of life at an early age. Maybe you remember being a child or teenager and asking yourself, why are we here? As while everyone else around you was more concerned with fitting in, playing games or following routines without a second thought. Sometimes this can make a person feel different, even isolated. Others might label these questions as pessimistic, overly serious, or too much for your age. But for Carl Jung, this tendency wasn't a flaw. It was a mark of a highly reflective mind. Jung believed that when someone begins searching for meaning early, it is a sign of being oriented toward the self, the central archetype of wholeness in his psychology. Rather than living only on the surface, this person's psyche is already tuned to deeper layers of existence. He also saw this as a form of innate philosophical thinking. To Jung, intelligence wasn't just about solving practical problems, but about seeking truth, questioning assumptions, and refusing to live mechanically. So if you've ever felt out of place because you asked questions that others avoided, about life, death, or purpose, remember, Jung would see this not as strangeness, but as proof of a mind attuned to greater depths of reality. Some people grow up fascinated not by toys, gossip, or trends, but by deep and mysterious subjects. Maybe as a child you were drawn to philosophy, psychology, spirituality, or even books and films that explored mystery, death, or the unknown. While your peers might have preferred light conversations or entertainment, you were captivated by the questions no one else seemed to ask. To many, this can look unusual or even socially awkward. But for Carl Jung, this early curiosity was a powerful indicator of intelligence. He believed that such an orientation reveals the early activation of archetypes, universal patterns of the collective unconscious that guide human experience. When these archetypes awaken in someone young, they naturally feel compelled to explore ideas that others only start to consider much later in life. Jung would also call this a sign of symbolic intelligence, the ability to think beyond the literal and to perceive deeper meanings behind things. It's not just about knowing facts, but about recognizing the invisible structures of life. So if you've always felt drawn to deep conversations or profound topics, even when others found them boring or intimidating, Jung would say this is not a flaw, it's evidence of a mind capable of navigating the symbolic depths of human existence. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed the tension, even before anyone spoke? Or maybe you found yourself feeling the sadness or joy of a friend so strongly that it almost seemed like those emotions were your own. To some, this level of sensitivity looks like weakness or being too emotional. But for Carl Jung, it was the opposite. It was a sign of rare intelligence. Jung saw this capacity as an expression of the intuitive function, one of the 4 core ways the psyche processes reality. People with strong intuition don't just rely on logic or what is visible, they sense what lies beneath the surface, often picking up on truths that others completely miss. He also connected this gift to the integration of anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine principles of the psyche. When these aspects are more balanced, a person becomes more receptive to the inner world of others, more attuned to subtle emotional currents. So while empathy this strong can sometimes feel overwhelming, Jung would say it's a sign of advanced psychic awareness. It shows that your mind is not only intelligent in the rational sense, but deeply connected to the collective field of human emotion. Have you ever thought about someone, and then they suddenly called you? Or noticed the same numbers, images, or phrases appearing again and again during an important moment in your life? To most people, these things are dismissed as random coincidence. But Carl Jung gave them a very different name, synchronicities. Jung described synchronicity as a meaningful connection between events that cannot be explained by cause and effect. To recognize these patterns, you need more than logic. You need a mind that is tuned to symbols and hidden connections. He believed that people who notice synchronicities are exercising a special kind of intelligence, the ability to perceive the symbolic dimension of reality. Instead of only seeing life as random accidents, they understand that meaning itself weaves events together. Jung also connected this to the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human symbols and archetypes. When you see patterns in life, it's not just your imagination, it may be your psyche resonating with something larger, a field of meaning that unites all of us. So if you've ever felt that the universe was sending you signs, Jung wouldn't call you superstitious. He would say you're demonstrating a higher sensitivity, an intelligence that goes beyond the literal and perceives the deeper order hidden in chaos. Many people lie awake at night, replaying the day in their minds, thinking about what they said, what they should have said, and how they could have acted differently. Others immediately blame themselves when something goes wrong, even if no one else noticed their mistake. At first glance, this looks like insecurity or overthinking. But Carl Jung saw something much deeper in this behavior. For Jung, intense self-criticism is a sign of a mind engaged in the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming your truest self. Only someone with a reflective and intelligent psyche can look inward, examine their actions, and search for greater authenticity. He also believed this habit shows a highly developed reflective function, the rare ability of the mind to observe itself. Most people act without much awareness of their motives, but when you question yourself even harshly, it means your consciousness is trying to grow beyond automatic patterns. Of course, self-criticism can become destructive if it turns into constant self-judgment. But Jung would remind us that when balanced, this trait is not a weakness. It's actually a mark of advanced intelligence, the willingness to shine a light on your own shadow and learn from it. Have you ever been at a party, surrounded by small talk and felt completely disconnected? Maybe gossip and shallow conversations drain you, while deep, meaningful dialogue excites you. Many people who experience this think there's something wrong with them, that they're antisocial or too serious. But Carl Jung would have seen it differently. Jung believed that this discomfort is a sign of a psyche oriented toward depth rather than appearances. A highly intelligent mind doesn't feel nourished by trivial exchanges. It craves authenticity and meaning. For Jung, this is not social weakness, it's spiritual strength. He also described this as part of the soul's vocation for individuation. When your inner drive is pushing you to become your authentic self, you naturally resist environments that feel fake, shallow, or disconnected from truth. Feeling out of place is often proof that your psyche is searching for something higher. So instead of judging yourself for not fitting into superficial groups, Jung would say this is a clear sign of deeper intelligence. It means your energy is too valuable to waste on masks and empty conversations. You're designed for something greater. Many people dismiss daydreaming as laziness or distraction. Maybe you've been accused of having your head in the clouds, of not paying attention to the real world. But have you ever noticed how, in those moments of drifting thought, the best ideas sometimes appear? For Carl Jung, this wasn't a coincidence. It was a sign of a particular kind of intelligence. Jung believed that daydreaming is one way the unconscious communicates with the conscious mind. While you appear to be doing nothing, your psyche is actually making connections that logic alone could never reach. What looks like aimless wandering of the mind is often a hidden process of integration and creativity. He also saw this as evidence of the intuitive function at work, the ability to perceive possibilities, patterns, and solutions before they are fully formed. People who allow themselves to drift into imagination are often the ones who discover the most original ideas because they trust the fertile ground of the unconscious. So if you've ever been told to stop dreaming and get back to reality, Jung would encourage the opposite, to honor those inner wanderings. They may be one of the clearest signs of an intelligent psyche, capable of turning invisible threads of thought into real and powerful solutions. In a world that prizes speed and quick reactions, people who take their time are often misunderstood. Maybe you've been told that you're too slow to respond, or that you overthink before making a decision. But Carl Jung would see this not as a weakness, but as one of the clearest signs of higher intelligence. Jung believed that the ability to pause, observe, and reflect before acting is a mark of introverted thinking, a function that processes information deeply instead of reacting on impulse. Rather than rushing into automatic responses, this kind of mind weighs different perspectives, searching for the most authentic and meaningful path. He also saw it as a reflection of archetypal wisdom within the psyche. To Jung, true intelligence is not measured by speed, but by depth. The willingness to hold back, to listen inwardly, and to allow insight to emerge is what separates mere cleverness from genuine wisdom. So if you've ever felt pressured to answer quickly or act fast, remember, Jung would argue that your patience is not a flaw. It is evidence that your psyche is aligned with a deeper intelligence, one that sees beyond the immediate moment and aims for truth.